we are almost the first people who come to a new lab space of Symbiont Labs. And here today are three co-founders, Frazier, Jason, and Cassox. So these guys know everything about human augmentation. They can augment everybody with everything. And if you ever wondered how to open doors with the tip of your finger, how to pay with your ear at the supermarket, and how to make your butt glowing and pulsing by your heartbeat, so they are your go-to people. So guys, thank you for having us here today. What you are doing is perfectly wild, and I would love to hear how you became co-founders of Symbiont Labs. So what are your personal stories?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Cassox, and I actually founded an organization called Augment. It's a community organization where we have a huge community of biohackers. And we've been doing this type of work for a long time. We're actually down here, and we launched Symbiont Labs to essentially find a place where we can legally do this, and to a place where we could prosper. And that's what we found.
Hi, I'm Jason. I'm sort of the boring business suit guy of the team. My story was quite different. I came down here for the beautiful island weather, and actually the special economic zone called Prospero. I had heard about this probably in 2022 kind of thing, in just sort of the earlier days where Nicholas was putting together, Nicholas of Italia, which is also part of where we're at. He told me, it's like, hey, there's this place in the Caribbean, they're building a charter city down there, there's a lot of economic growth opportunities, and I was in the deep tech space, and I was actually here at Ethereum Denver, which is a crypto conference, one of the giant hackathons, one of the biggest hackathons in the world happens at Ethereum Denver. There's like 8 to 12,000 hackers in the Web3 space. And we had talked a little bit about charter cities and like where's innovation, where's excitement happening. And he told me, it's like myself and my wife moved to this island called Roatan. And I'm like, Roatan, is that like in the Caribbean? Don't people just dive here? Like, what is here? So I really didn't believe it. And for 6 months, he organized conference after conference, trying to get us all to come and see what was going on. And I said, no matter what your next conference is about, I'm going to come see it. I'm going to go check it out. And so I did, and I came to the island, and I immediately fell in love with it. I'm also into crypto and Bitcoin kind of thing. I come from a background, I was part of a Web3 sort of accelerator company and a marketing and communications kind of background, and I do marketing and communications work, right? So I came down here, I'm like, this is a story that I haven't heard of before, so it probably needs to be told a little bit louder and prouder, right? And it's an amazing place. The Bitcoin Community Center here is doing financial education. The city itself is opening up to all sorts of technological projects and ideas. This sort of reminds me of sort of that early kind of Silicon Valley vibe where there's a lot of techno-optimists, there's a lot of founders, there's a lot of excitement that we can solve problems and do things. But it's very small, and it's still a place that's largely undiscovered. Flash forward to 2024. I moved to the island at the third quarter of 2023, right? And now Nicholas is saying, let's do Vitalia, let's do this city of life. Let's bring all these biohackers and the people that are interested in longevity and let's see what happens. Let's do a pop-up experiment. Earlier, people might be familiar with this pop-up city experiment called Zuzulu that happened in Europe. And so this was going to be the sort of spiritual successor to Zuzulu, but in the Caribbean, right? And so this guy comes. And originally, I just saw him in one of the little sort of makerspace kind of like experimental workshop places. And a mutual friend of ours connected us together. and said, hey, you guys got to really talk to these guys. And they're in cybernetics, they're into really cool stuff. I've always been a fan of deep tech. I've been a fan of like all kinds of things happening, but cybernetics was something that I was like, is this like something out of a movie? Like, is this real? I wasn't quite understanding. And then I talked to him and I realized that the very problems that were holding back cybernetics were something that Vitalia in the city of the special economic zone inside of Prospera were something that, hey, now we could break the barriers. Now we can make a space for this. The implications of the technology, as he was describing it to me, are staggering because everybody has what you have in your hand. Mm-hmm. Everybody has a cell phone, right? And we're becoming more intimate with our devices, and they're getting smaller and smaller. They're getting faster and faster, and eventually they're going to be inside of us. There's like an entire story that we don't know is happening inside of our own bodies. We don't really have a lot of sensory data. In fact, a lot of people just drop dead from a heart attack or a stroke, but maybe there's some vital signs that we could be monitoring. Maybe we don't have to be in a hospital bed to know what's going on with our bodies. But if that's true, then what's happening with all that data? Are we going to be monitored? Are we going to be more like, human livestock? Or are we going to actually take control of that situation? If nobody's thinking about these issues, we're going to have something like
Google, somebody else will think about
Apple,
these issues,
right? Or some of these bigger companies, these bigger like just data mining, data harvesting companies, and you're not going to be in control of your own body at some point. That's a possible dystopian outcome. And so we were like, hey, look, if we can build these devices, we want to build them smartly. We want to build them through the community. His community was really like a small underground sort of rebel alliance against the man kind of scenario. But now it's like, hey, look, there's a lot of us out here. We just didn't have a home and a place.
Yeah, I would say that like the community that I come from, it's a very kind of punk approach to a lot of things, right? I'm sure you being here have heard about, some of the things to where it's like, well, in a lot of ways, regulatory agencies are slowing everything down, right? To just, an untenable degree, But at the same time, trying to push things forward and doing it, as some kind of underground movement, the risk is huge. Okay, it really is huge. It's the same as this. Let's just, write a book. The easy response, right? It sounds simple, but it's dangerous. It's hard. So what we really need is not something where we're, operating in this underground type of thing. We need structure. We need regulation, but we need structure and regulation that's friendly and both safe, but also allows for us to accelerate and do these things. So for us, it's not that I think I started by saying a place that's legal. The things we've been doing so far have been legal in the States, but what we want to do is not, right? Or at the very least, it's in a very gray area. They're regulating at this point wearables. And kind of like how you guys are saying, someone's going to do it. It might be Google, it might be whoever, right? Problem with letting this just naturally occur, this to, end up in the hands of those who develop it and own the system that we have now, essentially, right? If we wait, look at the things they've tried to do. You look at Fitbit, they tried to make it a subscription service so that your very own heartbeat in your chest, which their device that you paid for and are wearing it on the wrist, now you pay the money to get that result, right? This is already, in my opinion, not okay. And then when we extend it to the next step, what if you have an implant? And this implant is, your heartbeat, your biosignal. And Jason mentioned like vitals, these vitals. And it's like, well, it's funny, it popped in my head, there's 5 vitals. Vitals is this idea, there's only 5 of them. They're traditional, they're the ones that are really easy and they're really relevant, right? Well, relevant because they're easy to interpret. There's so many other biosignals, everything from your respiratory rate, which is mostly untapped, to far more advanced things. I'm not even talking about things as complex as EEG, It's just even, think about how relevant, how often you eat, how often you drink, how often you urinate or defecate, right? These things, we're not sensing this. And yet this data that was clinically relevant. This is data which, if we were paying attention, might solve the problem of obesity in America, or who knows. But it's like the vitals are cool, but what else are we missing that are beyond these things, you know? Because yeah, that 1 in 1,000, like, oh yeah, the watch, the Apple Watch, you know, it's so cool. You can get your EKG, you know, and I can read an EKG. I was a nurse for years. And it does nothing for me. There is that situation where if you have AFib and it tells you go to the doctor, you have AFib, and that's saving lives. It's amazing. It's, you know, 1 in 100,000 or whatever situation, but it's fantastic. But you know, if I'm wearing this watch, I want to have a use now for me, Mike, and you know, I want it to be like boop boop. What's you know, my bank account, and it does that, right? But it's the same with implants, right? If I have an implant, sure, send me to the hospital if I'm sick. But what else can you do? You know, that's what matters. You know? So that's kind of where we're at. We're building all those use cases now, you know, and I'm really excited. You know, we're building them in a place where, you know, we not only are not in legal gray area anymore, we're in a place where, you know, the people here are supporting us, you know.
Radical acceptance.
Absolutely, yeah, you know, and yeah, go, sorry.
Oh, I was just saying.
let's Frazier introduce you.
In the perspective, that's what I was just saying. It's like just like coming at it from a tech enthusiast angle, like I was, is far different than also getting this story of like somebody that's been in traditional medicine from, you know, like a clinical setting and an ER nurse, and then you also have now Frazier's story too, which is also different. And I think it's all of those perspectives that make a big difference.
Yeah, so I came from I did my undergrad in biology, cell biology is my background. And after I graduated college, I heard about Cassox and some of the like biohacking experiments he did with like his vitamin A project and like night vision eye drop project. That got like a bunch of like attention. That like blew up. Like everyone was telling me about it, and that's how I learned about him. So then, after college, I met up with him and went to Grindfest, which is this meetup of these different like grinders, which are like implant enthusiasts, basically. It's like our subset of biohackers specifically. And so we came out, and then the rest is like kind of history. We're here now in this new lab space. That's cool.
There was a lot in there.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there's a lot.
Symbiont Labs.
Yeah.
So now I wonder, you said, and I also had this question because when I researched a bit, like bioaugmentation, biohacking, can you explain a little bit? Like you said that it's a very vast term. So what are the main, I would say, parts or different directions in this movement that exists? And is biohacking a gateway to bioaugmentation, or they coexist together peacefully?
I'm starting to just omit that word, essentially. Biohack, I can't help it, I still say it a lot, right? So even back when we started using that terminology, it was pretty diverse. Then, it was essentially David Asprey started really doubling down on the use. So it became this kind of split, you know. And I thought it was funny, there was a Los Angeles Times article where they're like, you know, they did this whole thing about David Asprey, and then we went and visited the real biohackers, and they came up to my Grindfest festival that we had. You know, I was like, yes, but I mean, as much as I want to own that term, the reality is that no, that's both totally, and at that point they've won, right? But I mean, at this point, if you look up biohacking, it is generally referring to things like practices, different
you
types.
You can even meditate.
Yeah, and it's considered biohacking, right? And I'm not saying that in a mocking way. At one point I may have, it's like, we're the real, but it's like, nah. It's a terminology split. So the thing is like right now we're currently kind of using bionics and cybernetics as the terminology, right? Problem is even the stuff we're doing, or even the stuff we're not even quite yet doing. And in fact, our first sensor arrays are going to be coming out like August or so, right? When we're testing, we're not quite ready to, But even with that, it's like when you think, it's like, well, is that cybernetics? It is. It's the lowest tier, which is essentially sensing, and that's cool and all. But really, what we want to get to the higher levels, things to where our devices are interacting. I mean, even a simple version of that would be, you should at least be an alarm clock, right? I should be able to wake me up or do something, or alarm to whatever stimuli. If you're weird, the radiation is high, or whatever arbitrary thing you decide, right? But yeah, I mean, it's like we're using the term cybernetics while only being at very low levels of cybernetics right now. But just wait, we're gonna get there.
There's kind of like three flavors. There's like that one, like the lifestyle stuff. There's like the genetics and like the engineering, like bioengineering, sort of like cell biology sort of stuff. And then there's like what we do, which is like implants and like body mod types.
One where I want to be is beyond what humans.
So it's a limit, yeah?
Yeah, I want to be super, I want to be beyond normal human, so it's fine, vitamins and supplements will get you healthy, that's true, but I want to be like beyond that, and you're not going to get there through meditation, so that's what it is for me.
We're having the Human Augmentation Summit, and I was basically almost replacing the word human augmentation with deep tech entirely, because there's so many ideas out there, and it's sort of an explosion of all this creative energy as it relates to what does this mean, right? So we have biohacking, like people using maybe an evolution of the movement called the quantified self, where they're doing a lot of tracking, they're doing a lot of measuring. How often am I drinking water? How much sleep am I getting? What's the quality of that sleep? What is the impact of that sleep on me, based on the sensory data? And you're creating feedback loops to basically optimize yourself, right? So a lot of biohacking that people think of is really just health, self-optimization done at sort of a measurable level, right? But then when we get into like things like, okay, this is now like augmenting power. So that's like, for us, cybernetics would be like, okay, we're putting things, subdermal, like we're going like under the skin, we're putting in devices. These devices have various functionalities. They could be sensors that are sensing data, or they could be giving us entirely new sensory inputs, like through magnetic fields, like the ability
like
to sense
finger
things,
magnets,
right?
Yeah.
And then we also have things like gene therapies that are like modifying the code that we're running on, right? And so that's another thing that is a new kind of frontier. And then we also have DIY bio, and we have other things, and we have prosthetics, which are replacing things that are lost with us, and they, not really cybernetic implants because it's replacing something that's gone, right?
Or adding an extra.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
Extra.
Right?
Yeah, and so you have really cool projects, like say the Sixth Thumb project, right? And you have very creative people in those fields as well, and you have exosuits, right? And so as an exosuit or an exoskeleton kind of attachment, what is that? That's also augmenting you, but are you becoming more of the vehicle, right? And that's more of the bionics kind of thing. And so I would say it's a big tent, and one of the things that we have to do in order for the space really to thrive is to create a thread and to create a conversation and to create a collaborative network and energy amongst all these startups trying to do these pioneering things, and tell everybody like, hey, even what it means to be a human is somewhat, the definition is shifting, right? At what point are we really augmenting ourselves away from what we think of as being normal?
The coolest thing about what you were just talking about is out of that list, like robot suits are the only thing we're missing from Vitalia right now.
We're working on it.
Yeah, we'll get that
There's
too.
still 2 weeks. There's still 2 weeks before half summer.
Everything else we've got.
Sorry, this is not a promo for that. Continue.
Well, we just touched the Human Augmentation Week. Will it be the first time when all these branches come really together and have a discussion and place where people can exchange their ideas on like this scale, or somebody also does that and moves in this direction?
Yeah, as much as I'd like to claim that, this is a pretty big community that exists already throughout the world, right? So the type of biohackers that we are, God, there's maybe use other terminology here, but they've had groups. There used to be a meetup in Texas, Austin, Texas, that was called Body Hacks. DEF CON still has a biohacker village, and there's that's tens of thousands of people moving through there. There's we have an event every year, Grindfest, that's up in my lab in Tehachapi. They're already planning a Grindfest that's the East Coast version, that's just a gathering. I mean, these people, this is a pre-existing community that's pretty large, And we've been working together for a lot of time. We have tons of tie-ins with industry, you know, and we have tons of tie-ins with physicians and you know, educators. It's pretty well established. As much as I'd like to be, this is the first time these cool people will be together, the reality is like, you know, I've spoken with some of our speakers at different events together, things like this, you know, it does exist. I think the difference though is that this is kind of the first time where there's a potential path to turning this, rather than being you know, primary research and, you know, things that are essentially, hey, look, we can do these cool things. Look what we did. Instead, it can become something where let's create an industry. Let's change the world.
Well,
you know.
yeah, what I mean that currently a lot of these things are kind of underground, yeah, and living in this gray zone. And here they all can come together and say, hey, this is a huge industry. It has a big potential. Everything that you mentioned is crazy. It comes directly from Matrix and all the sci-fi films, but it's now becoming a reality, and you're creating a platform that allows all these people to shift the perspective on what they are doing, come together and really think about how to use it to move forward the scientific progress and probably the future of humanity.
Right. And you touched on a lot of points. And one of the things that I'd like to kind of go back to is like, what is the difference here? Like, we're talking, we're having a great conversation. What is going to come of this? Who knows, right? But if, like, we immediately say, wow, that idea that Frazier mentioned during the conversation, let's go build that. Let's actually do that. Let's take it from the ideation to the actual physical prototyping, and let's test some hypotheses. Let's get things done, right? And so one of the big things about the HAS Summit that's a little bit different is we're doing the workshops and we're building the space where these ideas can be prototyped out. We can have discussions, we can talk about it, but we can actually go do. And we have people that have done. And so we have like seasoned designers and people that are at the top of their fields that are coming here to share their intellectual capital, but in a pragmatic way. So over the course of the week, you can actually go from idea to like implementation, and you have the business side, you have this. Why is that important? Well, it's also the prototype of really what we're trying to build with Symbiont Labs. Yes, we are a cybernetics company, right? We're doing something really cool. We're creating these implants. But there's 1, 2, 3 of us. Maybe there's some people in the background of our company, but it's very, very small,
There's
right?
a couple, yeah.
So what we wanted to do is create like a space, a lab, a collaborative environment where the people that are in their maker space back home, in their garage back home, in their, you know, place in a different country can come here and like ideate and actually like do the work and work with us, because we now have the place where we can implant the chips legally. Like we can say like, okay, let's like actually put this in, but wait, let's code it in a safe way so you don't get sick and hurt yourself, and let's put the proper safety procedures, and let's have the equipment in place to actually do this. We wanted symbiosis with technology, but we also want this stuff to really work together in a way that makes sense and is safe and can scale.
I just thought that humans augment themselves for centuries, I think. Yeah, you can use, I don't know, like magnifying glass. So we perceive it as something very normal, although the idea of putting something inside your body, yeah, sounds a bit weird for many people. So what are exactly the implants that you have in your lab?
Okay, right now, Frazier, tell.
Yeah, like the implants that we're like offering, or like we have different like NFC and RFID chips and magnets, and we're also developing a prototype right now called the Pulse Light. It's has a photoplasmographic sensor, so it like detects your pulse rate, and it's going to have a LED light that's going to flash into your pulse. Yeah, it's like for aesthetics for sure, and also tracks your pulse rate. And we're also working on like an implantable continuous glucose monitor, and like just more sensors on our implants. So beyond just pulse, like temp, SpO2, that sort of thing. So,
yeah, we just got back from Sensors Converge, which is this really big conference in what was it? It's not Santa Cruz. It's
Santa Clara.
Santa Clara. Yeah. And actually, that's the weird kind of divide that you see is that most of the tech that's going into implants, like pacemakers and stuff, it's old. This is, some of the battery stuff's pretty updated, but I mean, for the most part, the technology is pretty old. Right?
Tried and true.
Yeah.
Tried and true.
And the sensors that have come out in like the last 15 years, like these quantum dot sensors and this, they were literally using from a good space, 8 feet away or so, they were using, I think it was Neuronix doing this. They had a magnetic type sensor that was looking at the field essentially of your heart to determine your heartbeat. It was using a magnetosensor. I mean, that blows my mind. And you've got to think, it's like, if that's from 8 feet, this is clearly a technology that's ripe to be used in something like an implant. There's so much out there, And if you're a company that comes out with this fantastic new sensor, new modality, whatever, right? What if you don't get bought up by the top 10 companies out there, Medtronics or whoever, right? What if you don't get bought up by them? Like, you have no path to market for these things, right? And it's amazing talking to these engineers, and they're excited. They're like, oh, dude, like, we want to get involved. We want to do this. I mean, it's like it's weird because, like, I think over at least the last 10 years or so, because when I first got into it, Frazier was talking about some of the implants that we're currently offering, right? This is a lot of that stuff's actually from Dangerous Things or Vivo Key, which is a company, Emil Grofstra. He's a good friend of mine. And they've been doing the transponders for years, right? And like, you have no idea the number of death threats that this man has gotten, But they've really tapered out because, just over the last 10 years or so, it's gone from this fluke thing where people are like, oh my God, it's either, the end sign, the end time sign, or it's this and this, or, all kinds of things. Terrified of being tracked by the government, things like this, And it's like, now, it really isn't that way. You talk to people, and at the very least, they're interested. They may say, oh, I wouldn't get that, or I would, or whatever. But it's not this really out there discussion it once was. I mean, look, everything we see in the media, everything from I don't know. There's just so much going on with cybernetics, and brain-computer interfacing, all these things that I think it's starting to seem very natural, an expected next step for what we're doing.
Why do you think it happens? So are we just like get used to maybe watching really some space movies, films about future, or it's just the general evolution of technology, also the like AI and robotics, that is blooming right now. So are we just feeling that it's more normal because we're surrounded by that?
Yeah, I certainly could just simply be exposure. It's just less shocking of an idea. It's in our face all of the time, to where it just, everything in the media at this point. It's from cyberpunk, whatever, to this and this and this. I mean, these are some of the big things. This is what kids are growing up on. So we have people. I would say even the first things we're going to come out with, right? A lot of them, they're tie-ins with people like Russ Fox and the body mod industry, right? And they love us because they want glowing implants. They want tattoos. I mentioned like a skull and the eyes turns red, and so they love these. And also, these are very simple ways for us to achieve our milestones. We need safe platforms to do charge and discharge of, say, different batteries or super caps or whatnot, right? And so developing these things, we can develop the basic work on a lot of the stuff that we're going to use as platforms while doing these really simple circuits, And so the first things that we're coming out with, it's like oriented towards showing stuff off, just looking cool and things, and that's okay,
So this is your go-to market, You start with aesthetics, with glowing tattoos, and pulsing implants, and it allows you to get more customers, to build something simple and to have more resources.
It's interesting, get more eyes on us, that sort of thing. But we're also, developing also towards like functionality, like with like the implantable glucose monitor and the sensors that we want to add on.
I'm interested because our friend, she's a biologist, and she doesn't have diabetes, just out of curiosity and love to track your health data. She was wearing this continuous glucose monitor. It's impressive. Of course, we ate all kinds of sweets and watched on the iPhone, when this croissant with chocolate will give you a spike.
Yeah.
But it's still pricey because it costs now around $100 and it works for 2 weeks. Although the possibilities are definitely mind-blowing. So do you think that in the nearest future, in the next maybe 5 years, we would be able to have implants to monitor glucose constantly, which will be much cheaper and would last longer? Is it possible?
Oh, that exists already. In fact, there's a product, it's called the Eversense. I'm trying to remember the company that makes it. It's NFC driven, right? But in theory, if you took a coil and you applied the coil over it and just had a continuous coil running, you can sample that data as frequently as you want, right? So, I mean, that already exists. The question, I think, for me is that if you're going to be doing that anyways, why don't you have everything? I mean, I think that's a low bar. We have those CGM. We already have a CGM that's implantable. It's, of course, we're, a battery-operated one to create continuous data. But if you had that, then why wouldn't you also have your heartbeat? Why wouldn't you also have your respiratory rate? Why wouldn't you also have the ability to do gesture recognition? There's so much on there that it's like it's that slippery slope. Eventually you run out of power or size. But the reality is, I think we're thinking small. We already have, for example, Holter monitors. If you have a heart condition and you should be monitoring and getting a frequent EKG, then you need that medical device. So what role does like an Apple Watch really play with giving you an EKG? If you need that frequently, then get a device for it, and if not, then I don't know, these infrequent sampling don't do much for you. But we should have both. You should have the medical application that's constantly underlying, because we don't want to die, right? Even if it's a moonshot and you're a healthy 20-year-old, there's no reason not to have a monitoring, right? And then on top of that, think of all the other functions, It's really, that's the thing. It's like, of course, we can do that monitoring, but we can do that monitoring plus 100 other things. That's what we want to do.
So what are the other 100 things? You said that you start with sensors, and then you want something more advanced. So what would be next steps of evolution for cybernetics?
Okay, I'm going to continue this thread.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell you what, this is one of my favorite modalities, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I actually, audio. Audio is such an intriguing one for me. It's really simple. In terms of the circuitry and stuff, there's a lot of cool stuff you can do that keeps your power low anyways. Now think about it. Right now for respiratory tracking, sure, they have the ones that use the MEMS units, little accelerometers type of things and stuff when you're sleeping. But normally when you walk around, you're not getting respiratory. We do have wearables that have a strap, right? And nobody wears them because unless you're like a peak athlete, they're uncomfortable and you're not gonna walk around with this strap on, right? We're not getting respiratory effectively. And even when we get it, we're not interpreting it effectively, right? There has been since the 80s, there's been studies showing things like interpreting mood from a person's respiratory rate that they recorded from some little camera type. It's really interesting. Respiratory is probably the best indicator of your state in a short kind of acute duration, right? If I surprised you, we'd see that, you gasped, right? If you're happy, if you're laughing, if you're all of these parameters, right? The problem is interpreting it. It's very difficult for me as a person to look and interpret that, but AI is so good at these things. And we are hitting that place to where we can take very complicated biosignals. Like interpreting EEG is, it's next to impossible. You've seen what the signals look like. The best we can do a lot of times is that looks very delta to me. We have 4 categories to pick from, and I probably checked the wrong one. It's EEG is complicated, right? Well, eventually we're going to have AI able to do at least a pretty good job, right? Okay. But all these other biosignals, there's so many, and I could definitely see that being a fantastic tie-in, right? So where we're at is we're developing, we have essentially safe biocoatings. We have pretty good power and pretty good power platforms to provide. Could be better, the technology, there's so many of them that are like right so close, that it might even be a licensing issue. We're close. We already have some cool stuff. But I mean, those things are solved, right? In terms of like even the sensors, there's some amazing things that we'd have to license because it's like that. But it's amazing and we can do it. But all that next step, because look, what do you have? Like a little screen with readouts that are telling you this data blank? It's like that doesn't do anything, right? We need ways to then use that data.
So to get insights from this data.
Yeah, insights from the data, which is really important, and I think that's going to be not us. That's going to be somebody else who's working with us. But we need to create each of these parts of this industry.
Yeah, and that's really where, again, it kind of comes back to what is the controls around this? Why do we call ourselves self-sovereign cyborgs? Is because chances are these machine learning models are going to need to be trained across a large swath of people in order to really understand what the individual nuances and patterns are. And AI is great at pattern recognition. It needs a lot of data, but it should also need your permission, right? And it should also, you should probably benefit if you're a part of a study, so coming from sort of this crypto, sort of Web3 background,
own your data.
There's a lot of ideas around owning your data. Yeah, of course. And just you are generating this, we could be part of a data union, and this can be a very consensual thing. But we should always, realize that, this is the final frontier for us. We're generating the data by being alive, right?
Yeah, that's really important. I remember how another day I was angry on Ura that not only sells us a device for 350 euros, then charges a monthly subscription.
They do too. That's insane to me. I just think it's absolutely insane, And so I think that, being at this kind of ground floor allows us to set values, so we come from an open IP or open source type of model, right? And so what we want to do with all of our stuff is that it's the fellowship. When we bring people out, the idea here is that you're coming out and you're going to work on generating open IP, and from there, sure, we've got to figure out ways how to get them funded, turn those people into companies, make all kinds of cool, but at the same time, laying out the groundwork. So it's not like, we're not trying to own this, we're trying to help it grow.
I always thought that we know quite a lot about the world around us, although in the last years I see that we know very little. We know very little even about our body, and I think that scientists and entrepreneurs who work at this frontier, they more than anybody else understand how little we know. Who knows what we will discover on this way, in this journey, collecting all this data and making people to understand, that inside of them there is like an ocean, of
data and things going on, processes,
You're absolutely right that there's just so much that we don't know. We're actually collaborating with MoonDAO, and their mission is to get humans ready to live in space. What kind of environments are we in? We're like, wow, we didn't know that there's a collaboration there, but thanks for helping us create the makerspace, so that way we can talk about how do we fabricate the tools that we're going to need together, right?
Since we are having here an uphill battle with construction workers, we will slowly wrap it up. Although it is such an interesting conversation that I would love to continue it for a few more hours. So could you please outline for people who are not that much familiar with implants, what are the possibilities that implants have right now, and what we can expect in the next 5 to 10 years?
There's NFC chips and RFID chips.
So you can use them
for access control purposes, for instance. So you can get an NFC lock, we have one in our lab space back home, for instance, and I have my chip right here, and I can
so
just
we have here a person
tap
with
it.
implant.
Yeah, I just hold it up to the lock, it unlocks it. I also have my business card info on here, basically.
So
and
you
then
have two?
or
it's in one?
It's in one. It's the there's enough storage in the chip that I can get all that. And
can you rewrite information?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's rewritable. Yeah.
So you don't need to cut it again?
No,
Okay.
definitely not. No.
That's smart.
And then I have there's also magnets. So I have a finger magnet, for instance, and that's yeah.
I can feel it. There is a magnet.
Yeah, I should always have a magnet on me at all times. So I can just show people. But I really should. This is the one trick I can do. But yeah, so that's for extrasensory perception. So I can feel a strong electromagnetic field.
How do you? What is the feeling that you get from it?
That's a tingle or a.
So in a finger or everywhere?
Just in the finger, in the localized area. Yeah. So it's interesting, And there's also small lights that are also NFC charged. So you have to have a charger up to it or a coil, like Cass was explaining earlier. So it's a little bit cumbersome, you might say, but it is cool. It is for aesthetic purposes, it does look awesome. So that's why I'm psyched about the lights that we're coming out with, and yeah, and then you can just get bigger versions of these magnets, for instance, to actually lift things. That's another thing that people use magnets for. Yeah, so that's the more mainstream things that are available.
I do want them, but I'm waiting for a lot of the next chips to come and to just figure out the right fit for myself personally. I'm very excited about the future ahead. I think we've just sort of opened Pandora's box. For a minute, we will change the conversation from PG to PG-13. So I think there's a lot of eventual sex tech applications that go along with cybernetics. We will be having some people in our community kind of come out to talk about some more of those more interesting sort of pleasure-driven applications. So that is a development that I see just sort of happening. So, everything from vibrating motors to all kinds of interesting things are available there. But to kind of carry the conversation forward about sort of the sensory data. And I think that, as Cass was saying, we actually know a lot more about our livestock right now than we do about humans. And so when somebody makes that great leap, and that somebody might be us, of taking what's already available and saying hey, what if we make this safe to put in the human being? We're going to see a lot more data, and I think a lot of people are not going to drop dead randomly. And that would make me very happy to kind of see. And I personally am one of those people that do want to live a much longer period of time. And I want to know as much data about myself internally, what's going on, so I can, kind of engineer my own body to, survive a long period of time. So that's exciting to me. What that actually equates to, we'll kind of see. I think that's a conversation that's starting to happen. But with a team like this, I'm pretty confident that I am in the best hands possible. So I'll pass it over to Cass.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I'm excited about is it's actually the stuff that we haven't figured out yet, right? I mean, okay, so with one of the first projects I ever did was one of the kind of night vision things, but my real goal there was, we're not that far off from the next color if you're going by the spectrum, how far, and my idea was I wanted to see a new color, right? And I didn't achieve that, color that hasn't been perceived by a human before or whatever, directly or whatever, right? And it's along those lines is that I don't have an answer. I like this stuff, but it's a little more, okay, well, you should have that. Of course, I want all my vitals and stuff. That's great. But I feel as if there's something here. It's like that thing, a singularity moment to where it's I'm not quite sure how it's going to play out. But I do know that, I do know that we need to become better. you know, and you know that's such a weird term, the better thing, because I'm not saying that in a way like, you know, you have to be better according to my definition of better, you know. No, it's you know, many people have their definitions, you know. We're trying to help people become the best versions of themselves, kind of a thing, you know. But I mean, but really, you know, look around at you know, like at the world around us, you know, and it's like we have to do something. And there's so many things that have been tried, and so many people are trying, you know. But it's like maybe the answer is that, you know, we're not enough. You know, we need some kind of, you know, radical change, even as to what it means to be human, or you know, I don't know, you know, and I don't know that, you know, it'll be our projects that get us there or whatever, you know, but those are the things that really drive me, you know, is, you know, the solutions that we don't have yet, but that we have to get to. You know, and I think even at Vitalia, I think that's the same position. You know, you see people who kind of vacillate between, you know, like you've seen it, even like Leo and people where it's like, you know, they have a few ideas and they love them all and they kind of vacillate between, but like they know there's some larger thing they need to be doing, you know, and that's what's driving them, you know, and I think that's what I'm seeing here, you know.
And I have to interject one more thing as the shameless marketing guy of the team. Like, it's the stories, right? You've got 3 very different stories here, but the very first thing that we did sort of as a marketing initiative, as we're doing the Hash Summit at the same time, is we're doing a fan fiction writing contest, because we need these ideas. We need more people to dream. We're gonna have writing contests every single quarter. And to really extrapolate these visions that people have about what the future of humanity should be. Like right now, the big problem with cybernetics and cyberpunk and all this stuff is that it's always some grimy, dirty, dystopian future where, you know, the technology is turned against us and there's dark forces everywhere. Why does that have to be, you know, what drives us, right? Like, why can't we be driven by new ideas? Why can't we be more solar punk and less cypherpunk, right? Or cyberpunk? Why can't we, you know, dream of these new devices? And I think that it's going to come from that. Like, so much of like our good culture has actually come out of like things like Star Trek and Star Wars and sci-fi writers and science fiction ideas that we now experience as reality. And I think that the more of that we have, the better. So these stories are great, but these are just 3 people, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we definitely need more stories, but I would like to thank you all, because I got 3 very different perspectives. Yeah, perspective of a scientist, perspective of a business person, a perspective of a person who loves to experiment and looks into abyss.
From like the medical side, like, yeah, more, because that's his background.
So, and that all creates such a beautiful, wild, and crazy and exciting picture. And we definitely need more of these stories. So first, we will publish this podcast early next week. So you will still have a chance to come and see yourself and participate in Human Augmentation Week, and also participate in the contest, in the writing contest, and come and augment yourself to the fullest at Symbiont Labs. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.